Today we're going to be talking about the Bretagne Panther, the Tier 6 Premium Panther for the French. This is an interesting vehicle to get added to the game. It's probably going to go on sale during Tank Fest because I think the real life version of this vehicle is going to be at Tank Fest, which is interesting. And I think the tank has a really nice model, and it's interesting that it has side skirts kind of like the Tier 7 Panther, which is something interesting that the Poodle lacks. Now, whether or not it will actually make a real difference to this vehicle, I highly doubt it. 5mm of armor, which is what the Tier 7 Panther has. I assume this would be the same. I heavily doubt that would actually make much of a difference to the armor model of this vehicle. Well, to the armor survivability of this vehicle, but who knows, I could be wrong on that. Now, when it comes to the stats of this vehicle, in comparison to the Poodle, it's practically identical. In fact, the only things that really could be different when it comes to the firepower are the soft stats, which we can only see if it's added to Tanks GG, which it hasn't been added to just yet. And yeah, it's exactly the same gun wise as far as we can see in the tank comparison tool. When it comes to survivability, interestingly, the Poodle has 5mm better upper front plate armor, and the Bretagne Panther has 10mm worse side armor than the Poodle, which is interesting, which I think means this armor up here, this armor here with this sort of pipe on it, is probably going to be 40mm on this tank, because that's the case with the VK3002M. I would assume this thing is going to be more like a VK3002M than like an actual Tier 7 Panther just down tiered, because well, the VK3002M, unlike the Poodle, will actually always get overmatched on the side armor by 122mm guns. The Poodle, if it's hit up in this area here, will actually deflect shots like that there, because it has the 50mm of armor to do so, which is an advantage to the Poodle, but whether or not that's really relevant to you is up to you to decide. Now, when it comes to the mobility and actually really the concealment as well, the Poodle is also a little bit better, which is kind of strange if you think about it, because you would think that with this all this camo and stuff that the Bretagne Panther has, you would think it would have a little bit better camo, and there's not really that much that's been added on top of this tank as far as I can see to make it weigh an extra what I think it's 800 kilograms heavier than the Poodle. I really don't know why it would be so much heavier than the Poodle, because well, actually no, it's over a ton heavier actually, just looking at that again. Jeez, I wonder why. Because if you look at this here, I haven't added extra weight onto the Bretagne Panther or something like that. Both tanks are set up in exactly the same way, so it's kind of strange that the Bretagne Panther seems to be a little bit weaker than a tank that came before it. But I think there actually might be some logic behind this, because the Bretagne Panther is being added to a tree that's been in the game for years, whereas the Poodle got added to a tree which wasn't even in existence at the point in time when it was added. So this vehicle here, it's in kind of an awkward, well, not an awkward situation, but it's in an interesting situation, because people are likely to have very strong French medium tank crews from the MX-30B or the MX-30 first prototype, or the Batchet 25T AP, or even the Batchet 25T itself. People are likely to have very strong crews they're putting into this thing, and it's going to make a pretty substantial difference to how strong this tank is on the battlefield in comparison to the Poodle, because the Poodle is only really likely to have its own crew, or the crew of the 25TP in it, whereas this thing here is highly likely to have some potentially tier 10 crew members in it, and tier 10 crew members are typically very, very strong and have a lot of perks and skills and stuff on them. So this tank here could in theory be a lot more competitive depending on the crew you have in it. Now, there is one downside to this vehicle in the way it's set up. It has a radio operator, and the highest tier radio operator you can really get in the French medium tanks is tier 5, back with the G1R. So unless you have a really good G1R, if this thing doesn't come with its own crew whenever you bat, if it doesn't come with its own 100% crew with Brothers in Arms, then you're going to have to train up either a fresh radio operator or take a radio operator from a G1R. It's going to be a little bit fiddly because of that there, or you could even take one from the French wheeled vehicles if you want to as well. It's a bit fiddly and it's a bit awkward in that regard, but this tank is definitely going to be a lot more relevant than the Poodle when it comes to its ability to be used in the game, because the Poodle is a vehicle you buy if you're just looking to have fun in a tier 6 version of the Panther. This thing here is a tank you buy if you're looking to actually train up crews and actually make use of the crew training ability of the tier 6 premium vehicle. Now, would I recommend getting this thing? Like, it depends on the price. If they make this thing worth like 25 quid, absolutely not. If it's worth 25 quid, absolutely do not buy this tank. Because you can get an M4 Revelries for less than that, and that's a tier 8 premium. A tier 8 premium which will make a lot more credits and be a lot more usable in most scenarios than the Bretagne Panther. If it's worth like a 10, like if it's worth like £11, then maybe. It really comes up. It's really up to you at that point. Like, the vehicle seems like it's a little bit weaker than this tank, but it's going to be a lot more relevant if you have high tier French medium tank crews to use in the vehicle in order to like receive the crew training from the machine.